How resistant are you to the idea that everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be and perfect at all times? I am Tavish Cardiff. It is our Raw Materials Wholeness Week, and that is a loaded question, I know. It is practically impossible, I think, in a human body where we have emotions and feelings and reactions to believe that everything is the way it's supposed to be. Stay with me for a second, because I do think that there's a way to look at that helps us put a perspective around our own expectations and all of the things that we believe should be. So let's talk first common sense. When I first started this, our raw material practice, Quan and I really went around about what kind of things were in common. And that's where the pillars really came from. What are the things that every single one of the 8 billion human beings that we have in the world are going to be concerned with? So those 12 pillars boil down the concerns that each of us have, no matter what our background, race, where we live, all of those kinds of things. We still come into these same 12 considerations, hence the pillars. This is an ancient system of accessing and getting to know ourselves, becoming our own healers, seeing ourselves in wholeness. Let's talk soul-ego balance. Our egos are very important to us. They are a voice inside our heads. They protect us. They are an energy around us, and they are also a scale by which we measure things. We also have another operating system within us, and that is our soul energy. So a lot of times when we're conflicted on a thing, we might be seeing our ego feel one way about it and our soul feel another way. And I think a simplification of that is that angel devil on your shoulder. It's not really like that. This is more a weighing of who has the right of way. I mean, we are in a human body here to have a human experience. So sometimes go ego, right? We're supposed to have the exuberant and joyful experiences that life affords us. There's also, this balance that we do with the other 8 billion people, and we all have to occupy the same space, essentially, Earth. There's room for all of us, and I love that Gandhi saying, there's enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. And in my mind, like if I close my eyes and do a meditation on that, and I really think about if we could reorder and reorganize all of the resources to where every single person had what they needed, that the idea that there could be an equal amount for everyone is a cool idea. Now, I know that's ideal playground stuff, and we are far from that type of wholeness. When we look at our idea of happiness and the type of life that we're trying to attain or achieve, we will be happy at some point when something or things line up the right way. And we find ourselves second guessing choices we made for ourselves a long time ago. And, it just gets into this jumbled mess of feelings about choices that we make and really a lot of times choices that we didn't make. So happiness is to ego what wholeness is to the soul. The difference there would be that wholeness is achievable and happiness as we know it really isn't. If we started to look at happiness as something more like wholeness, then we might see ourselves more joyful even in the same conditions. And let me qualify that by saying, if we were to kind of adopt a mindset here and there where everything's the way that it's supposed to be, we have to back up and we have to now look at what really is before us, not how triggered we are or bothered we are by what's before us. We each have a different idea of what should be. And because there are so many of us, it's going to be really hard to find a consensus. We don't have what's common because all of our experience is so vastly different. What we can share is a common arena for getting to know ourselves and then being able to communicate with each other, being able to express our experience in connection enough with someone else's so that even though they're differing experiences, they can share common elements and we can learn from each other rather than be afraid or bothered or upset or any of the things that we normally find ourselves in reaction to. If we all believed that everything was as it should be, we would be a lot more happy overall. So happiness in these terms isn't exactly the type of happiness that our ego is searching for, but it is a state of being or a state of mind that allows things to happen. And so that instead of when something comes before us saying, I can't believe this is happening to me today, we just have a different attitude. Oh, this is what's happening to me today. And it's the same thing that's happening. It's the same car breaking down or, whatever it is. It's also the attitude about it and the way that we approach it. If we why me every situation and become a victim, we miss out on all the good things because we're busy looking at how we are a victim. And when we start to see ourselves as a victim in the world, we are not able to co-create the type of reality and world that we want. So the entire point of wholeness and living in wholeness and feeling like accepting every moment is to get past our stuck emotions. We're not going to stop emotions from happening. We're going to react and we're going to feel. And if we can own those things, if we can honestly feel good about expressing what comes up, what bubbles up, when we hear something, what's our reaction to it? And, that doesn't always have to be out loud. A lot of times our reactions can be internal. We might be the only ones that need to listen to them. But if we're listening to ourselves, listening to our fear, listening to our reactions, listening to ourselves in wholeness, we have a good finger on the pulse of whether we're reasonable or not. Perpetual wholeness is an easy state of mind to achieve. Well, let's not say easy, but it's easy to start putting those thoughts into your belief system. And once you do, they just grow. They're like wildflower seeds. You put them out there and you can't unthink the things that you think. The ignorance pillar itself, the very question of ignorance. How much is there to know in total? When you try to imagine how vast that is and what part you know and realize how small that is, your brain all of a sudden realizes, wow, there are people walking around with maybe the same amount of knowledge that I have that might not know any of the same things I do. That kind of math in your brain just flips it around and makes everything so much more exciting, and it makes things more interesting. It makes you more curious. So why live in wholeness? It is so liberating to let go of what should be and to be the creative personality that you feel passionate about being. And I think it's important to stress passion here, because apathetic not caring is not what I'm talking about. This is engagement at the soul level. This is acting without the ego's reaction, acting out of your soul and not out of the reactions that force us to punish other people, decide, where we need to get involved in something that isn't our business. When we approach our own lives with wholeness and our own experiences with wholeness, we start to see the value in them. We get out from under the shame that we live in for the things that we have deemed bad choices or bad experiences. And instead, when we look at the things that we feel like are the most negative in our lives as learning moments and as things that we went through that mean something to the rest of our lives, they're gifts that we carry forward. They might feel like scars, but those scars help us relate to other people, and those connect us and make us vulnerable so that we don't do what the ego does, which is think that it's here to just gain and get for itself. When the ego realizes that it is connected to something bigger, the soul, it gets pretty excited. And the ego can really get behind helping out the soul. And when it does, it's like superpower. I mean, it truly is an amped up way of being. It gives you better energy. It gives you better confidence. It gives you, and I don't give a shit what other people think, not to harm other people, but in a, you be you and I'm going to be me and I'm going to go ahead and be happy. Because even though we can't be happy in every single moment, we can be happy being in our true, vulnerable, honest selves. If we find our true, honest, vulnerable selves lashing out and harming people all the time, that's not passion. That is a harmed person in reaction. And sometimes it's hard to know the difference. But when you feel love and joy from within you, well up to the point where somebody acts really awful in front of you and you just back off and let them without any thought to what should happen to them, and then you find yourself living in a state of wholeness. I can only recommend it. I can't tell you what it'll do for you. I think it's different for every person that tries it. What I can tell you is everyone that I've known that's tried it has loved it. Wholeness is the goal of the entire our raw material practice. And as you increase your use of wholeness, as you increase your mindset around wholeness, everything that you do seems to have greater purpose and meaning. Life is easier to accept as it comes, and humor and joy become the order of the day over all of the things that could potentially derail the entire thing. Practice guidance for this wholeness period, which will stretch until March 19th. Try approaching each situation with open acceptance. When you see yourself being bothered or triggered, see if you can back up and just observe. If you can't, no problem. But if you can, noticing the difference is one of the coolest things that you can do for yourself. You don't even have to give the right of way. You don't even have to allow the space. Just notice how different it feels to not engage. And I promise that is enough to be doing it. Our raw material is a simple practice, and that's hard to get through to our esoteric, hardwired, need a lot of steps to feel like I'm doing a good job brains. Stepping onto that scale for the first time and recognizing that you are operating two entities inside your body, one that's out for you and one that's out for you and everybody else. That's where we find real magic. Soul ego balance. We will be back on March 19th to start the spring 2024 session. Thank you so much for being here.